The other thing that frustrates me is people who have experienced poverty, who have gotten the straps for their bootstraps, who sit and talk about how we shouldn't do anything for the next person.
Congresswoman Ilhan Omar gave an inspiring speech during a committee hearing that I want to share with you. Watch.
I'm a little frustrated because I heard a lot about love. And one thing that I know is it's not because of the lack of love that we're not able to feed our children. It's not because of the lack of love that we are able to house people. It's not the lack of love that we are unable to save people from dying because they don't have health care. It's not because of lack of love that you were able to finish college because you got help with childcare. Love has nothing to do with this. And if you want to bring love into this, you got to bring radical love. Because radical love means that we radically love every single person within our communities to make sure that we are providing for them the basic rights as humans. That's what love is. And that's the godly thing to do. You can't pray for your children to be fed, so you're not crying because they're crying and they can't go to bed. You cannot pray for your medical bills to disappear. You cannot pray for the mold to stop poisoning your children in the classrooms. The other thing that frustrates me is people who have experienced poverty, who have gotten the straps for their bootstraps, who sit and talk about how we shouldn't do anything for the next person. See, as someone who knows severe poverty, I lived in a refugee camp, on the floor, no water, nothing. And I hear somebody say here in the United States, they're fine with their grandparents not having running water? And that's supposed to be okay? We don't get to have those kind of conversations. The conversations we get to have is how we are responsible for fully funding our schools so all of our children have the opportunities we have as we sit in this room. We get to talk about the kind of opportunities we have as government to make sure healthcare is provided to everybody so that we don't have people dying in the United States because they can't afford insulin. The conversation we get to have is making sure that there are no children going to sleep hungry or being shamed in classrooms and in lunchrooms because their families don't have enough money to pay for their lunch. The conversation we get to have about the kind of poverty we have in this country is the kind of poverty that says it is okay for us to take photo pictures with veterans and be okay with the fact that they're sleeping on the streets here in the United States. So as an immigrant, as someone who came to this country, hearing about American exceptionalism and prosperity, I am appalled that we get to sit here and have conversations as Americans about being the most charitable country in the world and not being charitable enough to house our homeless, feed our children, care for our veterans.
So I thought that was incredible. Now, to be honest with you, I don't know the context of this clip. I was searching everywhere online, and it didn't really appear to be covered anywhere. So I'm not exactly sure. I got this off of Ilhan Omar's Twitter account, so I'm not sure the context in terms of who she was speaking to or whatever. But just this on its own, I mean, the points that she makes here about how, like, one of the ones that really stood out to me was her quote saying, you can't pray your medical bills to disappear. I mean, the work of politicians is supposed to be to help people. So talking about how, we care about our veterans and, America's the best country in the world, but not actually doing anything to help people. I mean, I don't understand how, honestly, most of these politicians live with themselves. They're there to help people, yet what they do instead is answer to their donors. That's what they care about. And Ilhan Omar brought up how there are people that have experienced poverty that are in Congress, and they still, instead of spending their time trying to pass bills to help people, they instead have completely forgotten all the hardships that they went through and have just sold out to special interests. It's amazing to me. So the real issue here is a lack of political will. There is a lack of political will in terms of pushing bills to actually help individuals. Like Medicare for All would drastically, it would completely transform the healthcare system, and it would have benefits even outside of healthcare. It would free people up from having to worry about medical debt, from having to have money to be able to spend when it comes to deductibles and copays, even if you have insurance. Not to mention it frees you up from having to stay with a company that you don't want to stay with. So having a Medicare for All system gives you the freedom to leave a job that you might not like, but maybe you have good health care. But now you have the freedom to leave that job and maybe start a business, maybe apply somewhere else, maybe, pursue a career that you actually want to be in. So on the issue of healthcare alone, there are so many positive aspects to pushing for a Medicare for All system. But I want to also touch on here Ilhan Omar. So she is pushing this No Shame at School Act, which stands up for students who can't pay for lunch. Now, this is something that I didn't even know was happening in America, where schools are actually shaming kids that can't afford lunch. So check this out. Quote, across this country, students whose families are struggling to afford school meals are being singled out and humiliated at lunchtime, Omar said. These students are subjected to various shaming practices by the schools. In a press clip posted to Twitter, the Minnesota lawmaker mentioned instances where students had been forced to wear wristbands for not being able to afford lunch or given unappetizing replacement meals like cold sandwiches. She mentioned that some students were even named in public lists as children with outstanding debt. This culture of lunch shaming has to end, Omar asserted. Under the No Shame at School Act, schools will be forbidden to publicly identify students who cannot afford to pay for their lunches. Identification methods that would be prohibited under this legislation include tokens, wristbands, and public lists, according to the Star Tribune. The legislation would also prohibit debt collectors from accessing school lunch fees. In addition to this, according to Omar's legislation, schools that have students who can't afford to pay for lunch will be required to certify the pupils and allow them to access meals. Such schools would be eligible to receive reimbursement from the federal government for up to 90 days, the Star Tribune reported. So, Ilhan Omar is one of the rare politicians in Washington that actually cares about people, that has taken her experience of, being in a camp as a child and understanding what that was like, what that kind of poverty was like, what that experience was like, and learning from that and taking that experience to actually help people moving forward as a politician who has the power to do so. So this is, it's unfortunate this is so rare. This is a rare politician that doesn't care about, special interest money, isn't focused at all on that. She is completely focused on what her job actually is, which is helping people.